Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathsala. Today we are going to discuss about orality, community and society. This lecture is a part of your paper Community, Media and Society. It will not be an exaggeration if we suggest that Indian society even today is primarily an oral society. Although community radio and other media have not sufficiently gained due circulation in India, but Indian communities have been extremely talkative. Following two reasons can be termed as most significant contributor to this particular module. Firstly, relative illiteracy among different communities across Indian peninsula. This lecture, or in this module, argues that orality has a very important role to play in any community and despite other tools available with the literate and or information society. Last but not the least, in this module you will learn and understand the regular interface between orality and other modes of communication, that is formal or official or legal, etc. Oral communication is perhaps the most used form of communication, and along with accompanying expressions, it becomes one of the potent forms of expression where every feeling can be expressed in most effective ways. If not all of them, definitely most of the linguistic groups have a section of population which cannot read and write but find no difficulty in expressing their feelings, concerns, apprehensions, etc. Most of the written forms of communication will require a tangible medium to conversation take place. However, oral communication can be carried out without the need of any tangible medium for communication. Formal official communication versus informal oral communication. It is a space where it's interesting to note that with the onset of literacy and dominance of print media, written became the formal and official mode of communications. Oral testimonies were being put to words, and similarly oral orders or command were valid if supported by the written documentation. Although it has been suggested that written communication can last for generations, but oral does not have longevity. Any student of communication history will contest that and will argue that oral communication lasts as much or more than the written documents. There are traditions which communicate orally and insist that the purity or sanctity is maintained only in orality. Apart from the popular saying, statements, slogan, when communicated orally, go much beyond the confines of literate world. As scholars like Romila Thapa and others have pointed out, that Vedic hymns were composed and handed down orally over many centuries. Even after writing became current in the 3rd century BC, these compositions continued to be recorded orally for some time, as they are even to this day in some places. The composers of these primarily ritual texts were priests. The meticulous oral preservation was backed by the theory that the sound was of fundamental importance, and therefore a mispronunciation could render the purpose of that ritual ineffective. A comparison in terms of permeation of the themes and contents between Vedic hymns and epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata is necessary at this point. These were originally composed by birds, the Sutta, before they were taken over by Brahmanas, authors, and the Bhrigu Brahmanas in particular, who probably recorded them in a written form. The birds wandered from place to place reciting their compositions at the large sacrificial rituals conducted by the Rajas or at their gatherings. Thus one notices layers of orality in ancient times, where at times oral traditions even enjoyed a kind of superiority over written texts in terms of authenticity. Although in contemporary times written has achieved invincible superiority in terms of authenticity, but significant relevance of orality cannot be and should not be undermined. Since at times written was considered more authentic than oral, it had greater longevity and permanence. We find extensive evidence of epigraphs, that is, in copperplate inscriptions, rock inscriptions, pillar inscriptions, etc. The reason as suggested above seems to be that epigraphs are usually contemporaneous to the events they speak of, and their information can be connected to a time and place. Inscriptions often reflect what people were actually doing. However, importance of diversity of language played important role in often defining the character of inscription. In some cases, the inscriptions are bilingual, where the eulogy of the ruler and the grant is in Sanskrit, but the technical data is in the regional language. Similarly, orality mediated between the written text and masses in times of low literacy. It was particularly of importance since few communities were deprived of access to literacy. It was oral or verbal communication which ensured interaction and transaction of business. As is being argued, the importance of orality cannot be undermined even in the society with high literacy. The same phenomenon we observe even during the Mughal period, which is considered as a prime of Persian literary culture in Indian peninsula, and Akbar was considered to be one of the greatest patron of Persian literary culture. Moreover, Akbar also had made Persian as the official language of the empire, that is, for official communication. Persian was used or made a mandatory medium of communication. Yet, it is interesting to note that at times spoken language became carrier of intense emotions of love and or anger. We see that orality plays a very important role in literate society, as articulated or examined by C.M. Naeem in his classic work on Jokes of Akbar Birbal. He has examined collections of Akbar Birbal jokes to understand the functions performed by jokes in a literate society. These jokes, which were circulated orally, helped in creation of multi-layered images of Akbar, Birbal, and contemporary societies. Thus, apart from official court chronicle and other written texts, we get a glimpse of important role played by orality in pre-modern literate societies. Similarly, emergence, growth and spread of Urdu in Indian subcontinent is another case which testifies the oral written continuum. There were several languages which were spoken as well as written, be it Sanskrit, Persian, Braj Bhasha, Awadhi, Rajasthani, Gujarati, Bangla, Oriya, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, etc. However, the grammar and script in a way restricted their spread. It was only with active patronage from rulers and elites that these languages could develop their literature and consolidated their possessions. In a way we can say it's suggested above. This also restricted their spread and defined their speakers. It is in such a situation that we see emergence and growth of Urdu. It attained a written form much later and continued in oral domain for a long period of time. The orality of Urdu was its strength and perhaps one of the reasons for its wider circulation from Deccan to Awadh. The script of Urdu is still debated and it can be very conveniently written in a Perso-Arabic script as well as Devanagari. Thus, it is important to notice that during pre-modern times, orality played a very important role, and given the low level of literacy, it was but natural to witness the domination of orality. This was most visible in rural communities where traditional wisdom was conveyed more easily and readily among the participants over generations. Agriculture in India is almost entirely dependent upon monsoon, and sustenance of primary producers, that is, peasants, is naturally dependent upon it, but even the secondary, in most of the cases, is directly or indirectly dependent upon the monsoon, that's on agrarian production. Understanding of the monsoon in ancient India to a large extent corresponded to the prevalent vision of cosmology. Meteorological observations were also colored by the people's vision of the cosmos, where the sun, stars and moon provided the tools to develop their almanac, the calendar. The Indian almanac was a manifestation of immaculate mathematics to calculate the relative position of numerous stars with respect to the sun and the moon. Examining the close relationship between the almanac and meteorological observation, as Zimmerman suggests, that it was believed that monsoon has 6 months long gestation period. Therefore, one can forecast more than 6 months in advance by examining the nature of clouds under a particular station of moon. Given the regular cyclic nature of celestial bodies and to a great extent even seasons, a correlation was in plain sight, which was and can be seen in popular sayings. These popular sayings mediated between textual knowledge systems carried through Panchang, that is the almanac, and realities as experienced by the peasantry. Predictions were carried out often on the movements of celestial bodies also. These include not only the sun and the moon, but also the other planets and stars. It is said that if in the month of Asad, moon appears either on Monday or Thursday or Friday, then it will rain. In the month of Sawan, moon is not bright on second day and in the month of Asad it is bright, then it is a good sign. However, if moon rises before sun in these months, then it shall be drought. Similarly, if rain take place in the constellation of Adra, then it shall be heavy, and if it begins in the constellation of Pushya, it shall not be a good year. Similarly, an attempt was made by people to predict the rains for the forthcoming season on the basis of different natural features spread over the months of the year. In the month of Baisakh, on the day of a new moon in Vadi, and if it is in the constellation of Revati, it shall be a good year. If it is Aswini, it is average year, and if it is Bharni, then the year shall be drought. Thus, the significant role of orality in transmitting the textual knowledge as popular saying and vice versa is clear testimony to its importance and prevalence. Even today, peasants wait for the weather forecasts on the radio and plan their agricultural activities accordingly. The importance of Bollywood cinema in the spread of Hindustani is a classic example of strength of orality even in a highly literate society. Influence of Bollywood stretches well beyond the confines of Indian peninsula and encompasses whole of Middle East. The lyrics of popular Bollywood movie can be heard in distant land, in land which does not understand even the basics of the language whose music they are enjoying. Written words can never imagine such a reach because written words require mediation of script, grammar, etc. In post-independent India, we have witnessed complex linguistic conflicts over the issue of one language. Without going into the merit of the case, it is important to point out that the southern Indian states have vehemently opposed imposition of Hindi on the one hand, but Bollywood has made deep linguistic inroads on the strength of orality. Thus, one can see that the community's interface with orality is defined by a very different set of considerations, whereas its approach towards written generates different considerations. While concluding the module, we can say that in the era of telecommunication and multimedia, we notice a peculiar negotiation being carried out by orality. The reach of written has become immense, especially because of its shelf life. Oral communication most of the times require immediate personal attention, and therefore its reach has apparently diminished. In recent time, when everybody is running short of time, nevertheless, it is interesting to note that for personal messages, even today, oral communication is preferred. Text messages are used, but are usually confirmed by oral communication. Recent survey on the telecommunication services being used by customers offered interesting fact that in India voice calls are still preferred mode of communication. A possible reason being relative illiteracy which hampers text-based communication. Moreover, listening to the person still has a favored position and it is reminiscent of traditionally domination of oral culture in India. Different communities and societies, depending upon their familiarities and comfort with textual, have included it, but the primacy of oral communication in any society is still unchallenged. Do attempt the questions in the self-evaluate quadrant. For further reading suggestions, please refer to the third quadrant. Thank you.